live with a few technical issues. So I think I have those resolved. So here we go. I should be able just to click this and get this working. And it looks like it is. Perfect. Okay, so we are live here together, all together today. So I can take these off now because I figured this out. So welcome back to another episode of Longevanity. Just before we get started, we are here today to share educational information today. This is not intended to diagnose, treat, prevent, or cure any disease. And the information and the topics discussed and shared today as educational purposes only. And again, with questions and follow-up, I always encourage you to talk to your own care provider. So with that said, let's dive in. So today I want to explore in a little bit more detail some of the specific pathways that we associate with aging. So I don't know for how many of you are already sort of following some of the medical literature or some of the even popular literature around biohacking and longevity, but there are different reasons why we get older. There are different things that happen to our body. So today I want to talk about different pathways that you may have heard of or read about or seen them floating around out there. We're going to talk about mTOR. We're going to talk about AMPK. I want to talk about insulin-like growth factor 1 or IGF-1. I want to chat a little bit about mitochondria and mitophagy and urolithin A. So those are some of the things I want to get into today and just kind of explore those and delve in a little bit so that everybody understands a little bit more about some of the different things that are happening. And ultimately, we'll try to bring it to cell senescence and talk about, again, zombie cells, because that's always kind of interesting as well. So let's jump in. So one of the first things we want to talk about is mTOR. So mTOR is one of the pathways in our body. And I want to preface this by saying all the different pathways we're going to speak to today, and I'm going to focus just on three. I'm going to focus on mTOR, AMPK, and insulin-like growth factor as far as their role. These are not intrinsically bad processes. I think if I were to sum up all the information in one line, it would be everything in moderation. That's really the key here, is everything in moderation. They need to be balanced pathways. They need to be not too much, not too little, but everything just right. So too much of a good thing is a problem. So when we look at mTOR, mTOR's main role, this pathway, is in building things. So good things from that. We build muscle, we synthesize tissue, but out of control building, we start to worry about things like tumor progression or development for that matter, and inflammatory processes. So these are critical components. So the R in mTOR stands for a medication called rapamycin. And so there's some very controversial and very mixed reviews about the role, safety, and other in using rapamycin in anti-aging. If this is something you're considering, I would not recommend you do this on just a Google search alone. I think if you're going to look into it, you need to see a healthcare professional under the advice of your own regular doctor who knows you the best. But rapamycin is something that we use to influence mTOR. So mTOR is increased or upregulated when we have situations where there's a lot of calories around, particularly simple carbohydrates, highly processed food. When our blood sugar is high, mTOR is really activated. Think of it if we were a car, like it's the accelerator in your car, and it activates all of these sort of growth processes. So for physical activity and muscle building, initially that can be quite helpful, but mTOR needs to be balanced or we get into some of those problems we were speaking to earlier, such as, again, out of control inflammation, perhaps tumor development. So we need to make sure we have that balanced with periods where we don't have excessive sugar. Otherwise, we end up with, again, insulin resistance and some of these other pathways. AMPK is the yin to the yang or the yang to the yin, depending on how you look at it. AMPK is a pathway that is activated in the body during periods of fasting or high caloric demand. So where mTOR gets jacked up when you have a lot of free-floating sugar around, AMPK becomes more active or more involved in regulation of the body when you have low calorie states. So this can be in periods of fasting, whether it's intentional intermittent fasting or just because it's happening, you're not eating as much. This can happen during higher demand states, like when you're exercising. And AMPK, activated kinase, is really important to help you make some metabolic shifts. So it's involved in your metabolism. It takes some of your ability to access some other fuel sources away from straight carbohydrates or sugar, and helps you activate and access some of your fat stores. So this is a good thing. It also helps with cleaning up some of the debris from day-to-day metabolism. So where we may think of mTOR being one of these sort of growing or stimulating properties, think of AMPK pathway as a cleanup pathway where, again, it helps to liberate other fuel sources, but it also helps your body clean up some of the end products of metabolism and keep you healthy and stimulate autophagy, which again is where you're cleaning up some of your processes. So these two systems need to be in balance. So how do we do positive things for them? Well, for mTOR, sometimes again, what we're looking at to help our mTOR be in balance, one controversial consideration is the use of rapamycin, but also just good, healthy nutrition, trying to stay away from highly processed foods, high glycemic index foods that are quickly converted into sugar and raise your blood sugar very high. Again, these are things to try to keep to a minimum because, again, they will increase that negative side of the mTOR pathway, which, again, we don't want because we don't want excessive inflammation. We certainly don't also want to have out of control cell turnover and cell growth or tumor stimulation. And we want to optimize our AMPK pathway, which, again, intermittent fasting is sometimes very helpful. Careful exercise balanced with rest is also very helpful. So these are some things we can do there. Some people explore some supplements like berberine, again, best taken with the advice or consultation of your healthcare provider who knows your health the best. Or if you've seen literature or commentary around metformin, some people are using metformin and berberine here to try to help the AMP pathway, which again is sort of our cleanup process, and it helps us liberate energy from fat stores. So those are those two. They work quite closely and balanced with each other. And again, it's all about the symphony and synchronization of these and everything in moderation. When we look at things like growth factors like IGF-1, there is an interest in human growth hormone, which again has a lot of controversy and a considerable amount of valid things that have to be taken into consideration before looking at that. Insulin-like growth factor 1 is also a hormone in your body that works in a very similar fashion to growth hormone. It's naturally at very high levels when we're young and we're growing. It's a good stimulus to our body, and it generally declines once we reach maturity. It is also a Goldilocks hormone, everything in moderation. We don't want too much and we don't want too little. Too much, again, we start to get concerns about overstimulation of cell turnover in an uncontrolled way, and we worry about things like tumor growth and cancer progressions. And if there's a history of that, you want to be especially careful. But too little of it, you end up with problems at the other end of the extreme with too little, like frailty. So it's one of those things, again, that we want to have in the right amount, in the right way. So there are some nutritional factors that can sometimes be very helpful from our diet. Onions and some berries give us plant phenols called quercetin and fisetin, and they tend to be very helpful as far as regulating some of these processes. So again, a very healthy, diverse diet, whether you're getting some of these other sources or these other phytochemicals or phytonutrients, can be something to consider. Then from there, let's talk a little bit about zombie cells. So, okay, that sounds like a total made up thing. Well, it's actually just sort of slang language for senescent cells. So I guess it's kind of a fitting analogy, a zombie that's kind of not really alive and not really dead. A senescent cell is a cell that has really ceased useful function and cell division, but it's not dead. So our cells have a certain number of times that they can divide. A lot of that has to do with these little special ends of our chromosomes called telomeres, and they get shorter every time the cell divides to a point where it just stops dividing. Now, if the cell doesn't die and get cleared away, if it remains on alive but not dividing, it's a troublemaker. You have a troublemaker in your midst, and it's a troublemaker because it releases these little secretory proteins that encourage its neighboring cells to also become troublemakers. It kind of recruits them, and they tend to stop dividing, and they also tend to release some of these secretory proteins, and they also stimulate a bit of inflammation. So they're really up to a whole lot of no good. So we want to encourage autophagy, or the removal of these cells, when they again become problematic. So again, we want to take a look at some of the things that might help us clear some of these things and get them out of there. So a zombie cell is one of our cells that sort of come to the end of its functional life cycle, although it's still alive. And it's there creating inflammatory proteins and encouraging other cells to do the same. And as these accumulate in our body, we age, and aging progresses. So that's, again, something we want to try to do our best to work with: nutrition, diet, exercise, to try to help and prevent and slow down that process. When we look at energy producing parts of our cells and other parts of our cells individually that age, we have to look a little bit at mitochondria. So mitochondria are the little furnaces of energy inside our cells. They do a host of little chemical reactions that convert simple sugars over to usable energy forms in the way of ATP and energy, which is our cell energy. But these little cells become, or little portions of our cells become dysfunctional as we age. And at some point, we need to remove them and try to replace them with better functioning cells. There's a lot of interest in something called urolithin A. Urolithin is not something that our body makes. We actually make it, though, naturally from healthy parts of our diet. Walnuts, pomegranates in particular, have a lot of the substrates that our body takes and converts into urolithin A, which helps us get rid of these dysfunctional mitochondria. And we do that by ingesting these things in our food or supplementing them. And then it's actually our gut microbiome that goes and takes them and converts them into the usable form of the urolithin A, which we use again to clean up and remove some of the mitochondria that aren't working anymore and replace them with new ones. So these are some of the different pathways. So if you've heard about some of these things, this is how they all interplay and work with each other together to try again to help keep us younger, and why we need to keep it in balance. So this is why nutrition is so important. Nutrition, again, we want to do all those fundamental things we've heard, but here are some of the specific reasons why. So minimizing simple carbohydrates, particularly highly processed foods, because again, these things tend to stimulate our mTOR, and they raise our insulin levels, and they increase insulin insensitivity. And that, of course, gives us problems in the future of both accelerated aging, but predisposes us to diabetes. We do want to increase our exercise so that we're burning those calories as they come in, but also the exercise and some intermittent fasting, or having at least fasting periods where we're not snacking or grazing all day between meals, helps to improve our activation of our AMPK pathway, which is a cleanup pathway. And we like that pathway because it's very helpful for that. And also that pathway helps us to liberate some of the fat we store and bring that into usable energy as well to maintain a healthy body mass. Sleep is also very important because recovery in all of our body's daily functions is necessary in order for the body to clean up and remove some of these different residual substrates and metabolites from our day-to-day activity. So again, sleep is key in there. So all these things you've heard about: healthy diet, good nutrition, exercise, sleep, it all plays a role. And then we have some supplements that can be helpful as well. So these are some of the different building blocks of healthy aging. Now, we're going to be doing actually this evening a big summit that we're going to live stream with lots more information. I'm just going to put up our little QR code. So if you scan this here, oh, sorry, this is for our podcast. Here's the QR code for our summit. So tonight we're going to go live. And we're going to bring in some guest speakers. I have Acorn Biolabs coming in. They do a lot of stem cell work, and they're going to chat tonight about what's new and happening in the world of regenerative medicine and anti-aging medicine. So hopefully you can come and join us. If you're not able to join us in person, it'll be live streamed. The plan, if we get our technical details working smoothly, is that this will be on Instagram as well as on our YouTube channel. And if you can come in person, we're here in Aurora. We're going to be at Breivik Hall. It's a beautiful part of Aurora Town Square. It's off of Victoria. The exact address is actually 50 Victoria Street in Aurora. There's ample free parking over by the new modern part of the building over there. So hopefully you can come and see us. And again, if you're interested in learning more about longevity, I'll bring back that other QR code. This is our podcast QR, so you can follow us there. And we also have a fair bit of information if you have questions or other things that you'd like to learn more and read more about on our website. So you can find us here on our website 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So this is our episode for today, and Wednesday, October 22nd. So thank you for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week again, and we'll carry on this discussion about how to live your best life and hopefully be here for a heck of a long time. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next